With calling it to order, doing a roll call, invocation, and the pledge. Of course, the acceptance of the agenda. Then we have some awards. And Jennifer, how's your last name pronounced? Dallahay. You got to stop getting married all this time. I'm having a tough time picking it up, but I'm glad you're happy. Okay. Then we go to item number 2 is the consent agenda. Any comments or discussion on item 2-1, which is the minutes for the regular city council meeting of 24 February. Any comments, questions, discussion, corrections? Seeing none. The next is the discussion of possible action resulting to the Plaza San Lorenzo subdivision plat. Questions? Are we going to do a presentation or not? We're good.
Oh, did Jeff have something?
Jeff, did you want to share something?
Presentation if you would.
Yeah, why don't you lay it on us?
You got it. All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The proposed minor subdivision plat will be located at 500 South Garden Avenue, as seen on the map. There are currently 2 office buildings on the property that were approved by site plan in 2005. The owner of the property will be splitting the property into 2 separate parcels, with 1 building per parcel. The parcels will be owned separately. No additional development is proposed on the property other than aesthetic improvements. Now, as you recall, the City Council approved a process for minor subdivision plats last year. Yeah. According to the Development Code, subdivisions with 10 lots or less are considered minor subdivisions. The City Council is to approve all minor subdivision plats, hence the reason for this request. Now, a minor land division cannot be processed for this request because, according to Arizona revised statutes, minor lot divisions apply to properties that are 2.5 acres or less, and the subject property is a little over 3 acres, hence the reason we're going through this minor subdivision process tonight. No monetary security is required as all public improvements were completed with the site plan. Also, a letter of water adequacy from ADWR is not applicable as this only applies to subdivisions within 6 or more land splits. So you can please have support, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions? I'm going to start with one. No need for a cross parking agreement, or does each parcel have their appropriate number of parking spaces?
Thank you. Good question, Mr. Mayor.
Of course.
The owner actually has a separate agreement for cross access, cross parking, and utilities as well. So there's a separate agreement that's already been recorded at the recorder's office to handle all those issues.
Okay. Yes, sir.
That was it, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you read my mind, huh? Any other questions?
How many units are they trying to do each one into? Has that already been determined? They're trying to break that up for each building?
There's 2 buildings on the San
already.
Lorenzo
Right.
Plaza, and
Right.
you're splitting it in half, and I guess your question is how many units in each?
Are they gonna, yeah, so obviously it's an old office building, right? And they're converting it.
Well, it's going to remain office building.
Okay,
Yeah,
so they're not converting it, it's gonna remain an office building, they're just selling it.
that's correct.
To-
Two separate property
Two
owners.
separate plots, okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Anything else? Thank you, Jeff. Good work as usual. Okay. Next, we have a public hearing item, and it's the Community Development Block Grant. I understand this is just a public hearing item where we're going to have the applicants come up as well as get a briefing. So we'll take the briefing now if you're ready.
Well, it's that time of year, Mr. Mayor, members of council, where we decide what projects and programs get included in the program year 2022 annual action plan, which is essentially our grant application to HUD for the use of CDBG funding. We don't have the actual apportionment number yet. We're anticipating it to be around $260,000. Of that amount, 15% can be used for administration and 20% for program services. So what that equates to roughly is $39,000 max for nonprofit program services. We received 2 applications by the deadline, which was March 4th, one from the United Way and one from the Dream Center. The United Way is looking to set up or not set up, they already have like an emergency crisis program that they administer, that this funding would be applied towards in a similar fashion, with money going towards like food assistance, rent and utility payment assistance. Let me just bring that up real quick. And the applicants will probably better explain their proposals to you on Thursday. I've asked them to attend that meeting. So food assistance, education assistance, homeless assistance, employment assistance, and small amount for administrative cost. So working through their relationships with other area nonprofit agencies, obviously. The homeless assistance would be funneled through Good Neighbor Alliance for hotel motel vouchers. The food assistance would be through the Sierra Vista Dream Center for low-income individuals. Education assistance would be through the community schools. And employment would be like, resume writing services that they'd offer to unemployed individuals. The Dream Center, they want to install 3 solar streetlights in their parking lot. It's dark out there at night. They administer several programs from that property that operate into the evening. They also partner with the city for overflow parking on the sports fields nearby. And the increase in activity has created a need for additional lighting according to their application, which they again will be presenting to you on Thursday. In terms of city applications, we're proposing the bulk of the money in keeping with past precedent towards public facility improvements, specifically Soldier Creek Park. We carried out, as you'll recall, walkway improvements last year, and we want to continue upgrading that property to include landscaping, pedestrian walkway lighting, and a tall slide from the top elevation down to the base of the park, as well as additional amenities as the budget will allow. We're in the process of getting specific cost estimates for each aspect of that work, but we would recommend that the council consider allocating at least $225,000 towards public facility upgrades. As an alternate project, if you want to just do basic infrastructure, which is traditional use of CDBG funds, Judd Street is a sidewalk segment that we've identified as needing, there's a gap there in the Soldier subdivision between Timothy Lane and Busby Drive. We're going to be filling in the other segments through the FTA grant that we received last year along Timothy Lane and South Carmichael. So that would complete the pedestrian loop around that neighborhood. There's already solar streetlights there that we put in, I think it was in 2017, using CDBG money. So we're just looking at the multi-use path portion of the project. We advertised the notice of funding availability through email to our nonprofit distribution list, as well as the newspaper and the Coke Cheese Coalition on Ending Chronic Homelessness. And so in terms of process, there's a public hearing on Thursday. You provide us with tentative direction on what you'd like to see included in the draft, and that would come back to you at your second meeting in April for consideration. We would make any tweaks at that time, and then the final adoption would be at your first meeting in May.
Okay. Questions? I think I got some questions for the applicants.
For the applicants, right, and that's why we invite them to the
And,
meeting.
and we need to get the feedback directly from them, obviously. I know it's not on today's agenda, you're probably not prepared, but at some point in time, probably the next work session, I would assume, Chuck and Victoria, I'd kind of like to know the status of the projects that are on the board, already been approved and where they are, unless you're prepared to do that today.
Sure. Okay, so with respect to Sears Center, we just received the environmental clearance and the authority to use the grant funds on Monday. So we've already gone through the procurement process. That contract is now in a position to be awarded, and it may have been awarded. I sent the green light to our procurement officer, and so that one, which is the bulk of our block grant funds from 2 program years, should be spent within the next 60 days, okay? The other projects, we've completed the environmentals. They're pending acceptance by HUD on the Good Neighbor Alliance kitchen remodel and the parking lot project at St. Vincent. We've done what we needed to do to get that clearance, and we're just waiting on HUD to push the button and send us that authority to use the grant funds. We have a scope of work prepared that can go over to procurement to start the bidding process. We'll just need to get quotes on that. Of course, Davis Bacon will apply, which will drive up the costs. We're hoping we can do that within budget. We're also looking at, in terms of the parking lot project, maybe tagging on with another contract again, rather than doing it as a standalone, maybe achieve some cost savings, economy of scale by pairing that with another asphalt project that's going on in the city. Emergency home repair, Blake is handling that one, and he's completed the environmental review on that. It's a broad tier environmental review. It's been submitted. We've done everything on our end. We're waiting on HUD to push the button so we can start advertising that program. The applications have already been prepared. The social media has been prepared. We're ready to launch. We just need that final environmental clearance. And I think those are the only outstanding projects that we have at this time.
Okay, I drive by a number of those areas, and I just wonder why we haven't done things like pave a parking lot, which seems like simple, but I know once you get into government bureaucracy, especially the federal government, you got a lot of hoops to go through, so we appreciate you continuing to push on that. Is anybody else got any questions for Mr. McLaughlin on this item? Yes, ma'am.
If we did put the, I think you said, and I read it somewhere, that 225,000 towards Soldier Creek, the things you mentioned, is that the last phase to complete? I can't remember.
I'd be reluctant to say that's the last phase because we're always looking to continue to improve our
right.
parks.
But
I
there
mean,
was like
it
a
would
plan.
Yeah,
it would move us closer to the vision.
Yeah. There, in my mind, there's probably at least 2 additional steps based on the amount of money available that would complete that, and that's if we want to do the upper level dog park, which I think is kind of interesting.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I tell you, you need to go
like
walk
that.
you need to go walk the land and figure out how us old guys are going to get up there with our dogs
you
and
can't
get back
climb the slide.
without having to call the ambulance.
Sled.
So
So-
it would be nice if they have a slide. Well, we just put the dog in the lap and go down the slide. But getting up there may be a challenge.
They got the ramp now.
Well, I know Leisure is
Come
looking
down
at maybe a
slide
water
either.
feature as well.
Well,
So
that may be.
yeah,
Okay.
there'll be outreach with the community to determine the actual specific items that are carried out. But conceptually, I mean, the landscaping and the lighting are needed. It's just a kind of a dusty lot right now.
Yeah.
And then the slide has been talked about in several public meetings with the Neighborhood Association and the West End Commission, and there seems to be solid community support behind that.
And I don't know if it's still an issue just because we're talking about the slide. Wasn't it like the incline might be an issue because it was too steep? We have a workaround that? Okay.
Yeah, they've been talking with vendors. It's just changing the slope of the sled.
I think the real challenge with the slide is being able to ADA access the top portion of the park. So you got to be able to go back and forth to meet the slopes and the turnaround play areas, et cetera, so as old folks with our walkers can get up there.
Like that ramp is right there, that new ramp.
It'll be professionally designed and constructed to comply with all codes.
Yeah, we'll meet all that. That's going to be a challenge. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Back to CDBG funds. Matt,
and this might be for you
Good timing.
actually, Mayor, with the council, is it looks like we're estimating 260,000, but the proposed projects add up to more than that. So is that just a decision council needs to
That's right.
decide? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On that same line, I guess more clarification from you or from other council members or maybe from Nate. I have to recuse myself because of
Recuse.
because of nonprofits. Still be in the discussion on the original amount of the CDBG funds. Or just
Well,
not be in
you don't
discussion at
need
all.
to sit down and talk about that because I think it's probably okay for you to sit up here and listen.
Okay,
But as you're vice president of one of the, it'd probably be best for you to not participate.
okay.
And again, you can probably talk to the legal eagle over there who would know more than me and get a readout on what you need to do.
Sounds good.
Anything else? Thank you, Matt. Next up is item number 4. Let's see. Again, it's Mr. McLaughlin, amendments to the West Sierra Vista redevelopment plan. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here, stand for that one.
Yeah,
This is a bigger one.
this is a big one.
All right, so, Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is the last step of the approval process to put into effect the revised redevelopment area boundary that you approved last November. This action will fulfill your council strategic plan objective of expanding the district in the eligibility area for the West Sierra Vista Partnership Program as appropriate. The plan was drafted to fulfill the minimum statutory requirements to put us into a position to implement the partnership program. We're not looking to break any new ground here or win any planning awards. Essentially just adds a little bit more detail on previously established goals and objectives with respect to West End revitalization initiatives. The maps and data tables have been adjusted to reflect the new boundary, which takes in all non-residentially zoned properties west of 5th Street. As you can see, the redevelopment area has expanded from 23 acres back in 2017 to 210 acres, which gives us more latitude to work the program. The redevelopment area is principally planned for commercial use. We've noticed some inconsistencies on the future land use map that will be addressed with the general plan update that we'll be working on over the next 2 years. One of the items is Soldier Creek Business Park is planned for multifamily use. That should be changed to a commercial designation. The Planning and Zoning Commission also noticed that the apartments on North Garden and Carroll Drive are classified as medium density when they were built as high density. So we'll amend those land uses to be consistent with what's on the ground and current zoning. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on the amendments on March 1st to conduct a consistency review with the goals and strategies in the general plan. As you know, the city's been diligently working to maintain, improve, and revitalize older areas of the community. And we've done that through considering the redevelopment needs and capital improvements planning, identifying properties offering a redevelopment or infill opportunity, improving necessary infrastructure in redevelopment areas, pursuing financial commitments from private entities for redevelopment projects, offering incentives for private development in redevelopment areas, seeking grants on redevelopment projects, identifying buildings and providing incentives for adaptive reuse projects, and solving challenges associated with updating older buildings to current code compliance. Those are all goals and strategies that were adopted back in 2015 that we're concentrating on carrying out through this redevelopment effort. You'll notice that the master development plan framework has been revised to include a urban framework plan that illustrates infill and redevelopment opportunities within the district, as well as potential major capital projects that the city will be concentrating on carrying out over the next decade. One of those projects is the redevelopment of the Fab and Fry property, where we're at the conceptual planning stage. We've divided that project scope into 3 phases. The first phase entails right-of-way improvements along Fab Avenue to include curb gutter and sidewalk, as well as perpendicular parking along its length from Fry Boulevard down to Wilcox, as well as a pocket park fronting Fry Boulevard. The second phase would expand the park and include potentially a movie screen wall and places for public art. Again, those are details that will be decided through the actual construction document phase. And then we prepared 2.
I want to stop you right there.
Sure.
I think going from this to the construction document phase right away without getting permission or getting input from council on exactly what they want to do with this piece of city property we've purchased, I don't have any problem with a potential pocket park on the Fry Boulevard side. I do think we have some valuable property that we paid a good price for, that we can have money coming back. And I think it's up to the council to have a discussion on what each of these parcels and the phasing of these parcels needs to be. I think we're getting the cart before the horse here, Mr. Patuchik. I really think at some point in time before we proceed with this portion of it, we need to come back to sit down with council and say, here's the proposals, here's the plus and minuses, and we need to basically throw out the fact that we may be able to take the bottom or the southern 3/4 of this property and turn it back for commercial development. I also have issues when I see driveways that have a 2-way arrow for an alleyway that's behind a building right now. We may be giving up too much. So I think we need to have more discussion and guidance from council before we proceed to take this and divide it up into 3 or 4 phases, whatever it may be.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the intent is to provide some master planning concepts for you guys to look at, so you can make these decisions. Of course, staff would not proceed without council approval.
Well, then again, it needs to be presented as a potential concept, and we need to have the opportunity to say, we either like it or we don't like it. There's potential to do whatever else, and have a work session with the council to say, okay, we'll bless this one, or we'll bless this guidance, and that hasn't been done yet. And I think unless council members disagree with me that we need to have input, I think we need to do that at some point in the work session.
I don't disagree at all. I think there's the public opinion part is definitely important. I think that's open right now until.
It's just closed, and I was about to get into that.
Yeah, so-
And I apologize if I didn't preface my presentation by saying these are concepts.
Okay,
And
all
we're
right.
seeking your input and guidance
I'll
at
get
a
off
high
my-
level.
I'll get off my high
Yeah,
horse then, Matt.
the cake is not baked, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So we're seeking kind of feedback and direction, not only from the council, but from the public. And I'd be glad to share what we learned through that
Well, no,
process.
and exactly, we
Yeah.
would appreciate when it comes to us so that we have
Sure.
the feedback from the public so we can make the proper decisions for the community.
Okay, so concept that we're including both concepts in the plan. Ultimately, it's going to be decided by the council, with the input from the community on which direction to go. And, so the north half, and the direction, we derive some direction from the West Sierra Vista master plan that was done back in 2000.
Oh,
So
I got that.
that kind of, gave us kind of a baseline direction to explore with you and the community in terms of public
But
use.
again, at that time, we didn't own the property.
We did not, no, but yeah.
Okay.
So there was a desire at the time to own property in this location
Got it.
for something like this. And conceptually, the north half of the property could be for public enjoyment. The amenities would be determined by the budget. Some ideas would include landscape features. potentially art walls, places for sculpture, a movie screen wall, and just like respite areas, benches, places for people to park and walk and meet up and enjoy the vibe of Fry Boulevard, okay? At the south end of the property, a couple different concepts. Ultimately, direction to be decided by council. One would be private redevelopment. This just illustrates one scenario that's been kind of expressed in plans and by commissions in terms of a desire to see more mixed use, true mixed use projects on the west end. Here we show a live-work village with, supporting parking lot improvements. Option B would be an extension of the public park. And what we learned through the public involvement, through the Engage platform that's been up since February 23rd, is that most of the people who responded live in Sierra Vista, so that's good. 84% that took the poll favor option 2, which is the public development option. Some of the specific comments that were entered include adding more off-street parking. So they like the movie and artistic walls, which were shown in the A2 concept. They'd like to see that in both the A1 and A2 for phase 2. One person really would like us to consider emulating Heritage Square in Flagstaff, which has like terrace seating within the plaza, which is a venue for music and events there. I looked it up online. It's a beautiful plaza.
Beautiful.
Probably add to our proposed budget. Of course, we're already working on holding more events, festivals, and live music. West Fest is coming up at the end of April. One person wanted to see a splash park for kids using recycled water. I think that's already being contemplated potentially at Soldier Creek Park. Interactive play equipment. It doesn't have to be formal. It could be just like a rock wall or something for the kids to experience while the parents are, enjoying the park. Not traditional play equipment, but maybe like a landscape feature there that would be interactive with the children. Somebody commented that they'd rather see existing building stock used for live workspaces rather than building new buildings. Keep in mind, the environmental aspects of the project, low water use, less concrete, more shade. Encourage more outdoor seating close to businesses, and that's something we're going to be pursuing through the partnership program. We've already identified businesses that we'd like to approach with offers of grant assistance to add outdoor seating areas. More than buildings, adding park and green space, more color and art. Maybe instead of the buildings for private development, considering a civic use there, such as community classrooms, a small library, or police substation.
A museum.
A museum,
It's too
that
small
was
for
favored by the
museums.
West End Commission. These are just
Yep,
ideas
there's already a place
that
for a
came to us
museum.
through the Engage platform. Of course, restrooms and benches, making sure there are trash receptacles and hydration stations. Again, these are details. Installing pull-ups and hookups for food trucks and EV chargers for spaces along Fab Avenue. So what the concept plan is really the broad strokes of what we're considering for the reuse of the property. Those details would come later through a second phase once we have the framework established in what direction we want to go with the property. And we certainly welcome the council's, we need the council's input and feedback so we could build a budget to start making recommendations to you on how to approach the project. For planning purposes, we use the consultant's cost estimates for phases 1 and 2. The south half of the property would be revisited down the road. We're proposing the North Garden Avenue and Fry Boulevard phases of the project came from the long-range transportation plan in terms of those cost estimates, which are relatively current. We're recommending establishing a public art and public spaces program at $15,000 per year. And then doubling the proposed funding level for the partnership program from $50,000 to $100,000.
Absolutely.
So in terms of process, all property owners within the district were notified by mail of the public hearing on Thursday. Legal advertisement was run for 2 consecutive weeks in the Herald. We presented the amendments to the Planning and Zoning Commission, who found them to be in conformance with the general plan as required by the statute. We did present the amendments to the West End Commission, and there was unanimous support for moving those forward to you. This will require a supermajority vote of council for its adoption. And then if it is adopted on Thursday, we would start accepting grants for the properties in the expansion area. There's a 30-day effective date on the resolution, so we would have to hold any approvals on those applications until the 30-day clock is up.
I have a concern. I don't have a problem voting for the redevelopment plan, which to me is expanding what we've already got as the area. That's fine. But when we vote on this item, to me, the other piece of property should be a separate item. The park and the park development. And it appears that we're putting two things that are different items together and asking the council to vote on both of them, when in fact, to expand the area, you don't need to have the plan for what we want to do with the park and the property that's there. So to me, I think we have two things here that require separate votes.
Mayor,
Please explain.
And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what the concepts and the Fab Avenue component of the West Sierra Vista redevelopment plan are saying is that the plan says that we are going to develop a plan for Fab Avenue. It's not committing you to any of those specific possibilities or layouts. It says a plan will be developed for that property. Is that right, Matt?
Well, the improvement of that property is integral to the overall revitalization strategy.
I got that part.
It doesn't lock you into a specific course of action.
And my concern is, in the past, when we've done this, we started with one, we defined the area, we defined what we were gonna do in those areas, what were we gonna offer, then we expanded, now we have another expansion. But to me, it's a different thing to say, here's the plan for the park, not park, or redevelopment of the city property that the city acquired during the process. So to me, to me, it looks like it should be two different things, rather than combined.
Mr. Mayor, I can delete the concepts from the plan and just put in a proposed budget.
Put it a general statement that
statement.
we will be looking at this other piece of property in the future. I'd be fine with that, but again, it's already in the just because it's city property, it's already in the zone.
The statutes ask us to include proposed expenditures to facilitate the redevelopment and revitalization of the district. And we could put a placeholder in terms of a proposed expenditure in the plan without including the specific concepts.
Well, I hate to be hard-headed, and maybe it's going to take you and me sitting down to kind of explain what you just said, because to me, I see them as two separate things. Just like you don't have in here that you're going to you don't have a street expansion program as a part of this. You don't have redoing other streets. You just have the properties. You're expanding the zone, is the way I look at this. Not just expanding the one city piece of park. So to me, those look like two separate issues. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time here, but you and I probably need to sit down so you can explain it to me, draw me a couple of pictures. So I can understand. But to me, if we vote on Thursday, it's voting on expanding the entire area and bringing the same benefits to the new areas as the old areas, and actually having a separate park plan, whatever it's going to be, is to me is a separate action.
I agree.
So I think I probably said enough, confused enough folks already. But I probably need to sit down with you and you can draw me a picture.
Well,
Because I'm really not sure what we're really voting on here if we go beyond just the expansion of the area.
Which was done last November. So the designation happened in November. Now we're proposing and presenting a plan for how we're gonna carry out redevelopment within the district.
Okay, well, again, I'm a little confused, Chuck. Go ahead, Mr.
Well, let me just say, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think this can be easily done right now just by designating a city-owned property, and future use to be determined. I think, right now, we're planning on a budget item for that property, which would be Phase 1, which is simply the Fab Avenue parking improvements, and then the north end pocket area because of the drainage issues that we have there. And that was always the intent, was to start the project by taking care of the drainage problems, which both do in tandem. And then then determination as to finishing out the park is to be up to the council at a future date. So this was just, putting in concepts, but I think we could just easily just say designated city property for future use, so.
Ma'am.
Let me make sure I understand. I think what we're doing here, and I'm trying to make sure I understand everyone's point of view here. So when we developed this particular plan, the current one that we're looking at amending, we did not at that time own Fab and Fry, and so you're adding it to this document so that it's showing. Is that what's happening?
So the last the person we bought the property from did not lend their support to being included in the redevelopment area.
Correct.
And it has been included in the revised boundary that was approved last November.
So it's now in this plan showing that it's now a city-owned property. And where your concern is because there's concepts and you think
Well, those
it's two
things, we're going
separate
beyond
things?
that. We're going on
Okay.
to the development process.
I see, okay.
And to me, they should be two separate tracks.
So you would be more comfortable if the concepts were taken out and it just shows that we now own that property, that we're gonna do something
And
with?
whoever eventually either owns a property or leases a property, or if it becomes all public park, at that time, they have the option of going in and improving things and asking for assistance, right?
Yes. So would it make a difference if we just whited out phases 2 and 3 and just showed the pocket park and the parking along Fab, where there appears to be a strong consensus among the community and perhaps council as what we're going to?
Well, I still see it as two separate items. Obviously, we're gonna expand the area. That needs to be done, first step one. And then what we do with the pocket park is different. To me, that's still a separate issue. Obviously, it's gonna be city-owned for at least a period of time. And Chuck very well explained that the first thing we need to deal with is the drainage, and that's on the northern end where it makes sense to have a park. But what's unresolved is what we as the owners, put it that way, not the city, but as the owners, what are we gonna do with our property? We gonna sell it? We gonna develop it? And that, in my mind, has not really been discussed.
So you think you're getting the cart before the horse?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
So what I would propose then, unless you guys wanna tell me to sit down and shut up, is we go ahead with this item and approve the expansion of the area. I'm not sure we even need council action at this point on the facts that things we're gonna do with our own property. And unless there's a funding tie somewhere in where we're gonna use, which we probably shouldn't be doing, borrowing money from ourselves to pay for something we wanna do when the program's set up for commercial operators.
You don't have to designate anything right now. You can just denote it on the map.
Okay, well, I don't know if we accomplished anything, Matt, or we just
Well, no,
confused
I mean,
each other.
just to reiterate, I mean, the property's already been designated. You did that last November. So now we're just putting in place a plan to address the properties that were added to the boundary. Okay?
It's just used to be determined, so.
Right, but we can be as general or specific as the council wants in terms of articulating a vision and revitalization strategy. If you're more inclined to go general, we can be general. We can just color code it green or just used to be determined.
Okay, well, I can say I'm prepared to vote on this, if we expand the zones. You and I are gonna need to sit down and talk about
Sounds good.
exactly what it means, and then we can bring it up for discussion on Thursday.
Make it a gray area right now.
Well, no, I don't care what color it is, okay? It is a gray area because we haven't decided where it's gonna be, but other than taking care of the drainage issues. So, I think I'll shut up and we can go on and you and I
Like I'm
need to sit
failing
up,
to
put
communicate.
our heads together, see if
Yeah, I
there's
think
anything
sitting
left in
down will
them.
be helpful. All right, sounds good.
All right, before you go, any other questions? Discussion, sir?
I think, Mr. Mayor, you'd be comfortable if, looking at page 35 here, that we just knock out the concepts.
That's not.
Because if you look at the language on the Avenue property, it basically says that we acquired this piece of property, we've had some concepts, this is what we're maybe doing with it, and just delete the concept A illustrates this and just eliminate those drawings. I think would that make you more comfortable?
Well, you're gonna have to get me oriented here.
On page 35, sir. Take that last paragraph out and delete the inserts. And that way we're addressing the issue of the Fab Avenue property without any concepts at all.
And which paragraph do you want to get rid of? Which of
The
the
last one, sir, where it says concept A.
Okay, I'll talk to Matt about that,
Okay.
and that may work. Okay, and I'll get off my horse.
I think that,
We need a supermajority approval on Thursday.
Yeah,
I very much
and we
wanna
want
keep
to
this
and
on
we
the
want to
same
get that done.
track.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever we need to do. just-
Okay, all right. So
And
we'll look at that.
and I think the main thing, as far as my concern is that we fix the drainage issues.
Absolutely.
That's the big one, as far as I'm concerned.
Now's the time to do it. Okay. Any other questions on item number 4, discussion? Seeing none, we'll go on to new business. Item number 5, Mr. Pregler on communication towers. The next couple items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me get my presentation set up here. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Since both of these requests are similar, I'm just going to limit my staff report to one staff report today to cover both.
So items 4, 5, and 6 for the people
is
following
correct.
along at home. Okay.
So the conditional use permits before you this evening are being requested by SBA Structures. And the request is to revise the existing communication tower elevations from a stealth monopole to a monopine. Now, the requests apply to 2 separate existing towers in town. First one is at 1300 Ford Avenue, which is identified in Resolution 2002-009, and you see the map indicates the current location just to the west of Sears Center Park. And the second location is going to be at 1045 South Lensner Avenue, which again was identified in Resolution 2022-010. And the existing tower is located just to the the west of the Joyce Clark Middle School, and just to the, I guess, to the east of A.V. Anderson Park. Now, there will be no changes to the height of the towers, which are currently 130 feet tall, or there will also not be an expansion of the ground lease area, which are currently screened by 8-foot masonry walls. So the applicant has indicated that the design changes are necessary to provide capacity for the carriers on the towers and to allow them to maintain their equipment to current technological standards. So in other words, the 5G technology requires external antennas for complete functionality rather than the internal antennas. So therefore, the monopines can therefore minimize the visual impacts of these antennas. And you can see here the existing monopoles and then the proposed monopines to the right of the existing monopoles. So staff worked with the applicant to ensure that the proposed monopines provided a realistic design while meeting the screening and stealth requirements in the development codes. Now, as a result of these discussions, the applicant integrated the following standards into the design specs, which are shown in Exhibit A, which is before you on the screen right now. So the first spec is that the length of the branches shall be in proportion to the height of the monopole as determined by the city. Secondly, the density of the branches shall be a minimum of 3 branches per foot. And I kind of want to show you what that means because that didn't mean anything to me when he mentioned to me the first time. So this is an example of a tower which has a density of 3 branches per foot. You can see it's a lot more dense than what you'd see at the Windermere Hotel, for example. So this is the density of the proposed towers being proposed. Thirdly, branches shall extend beyond all antennas by at least 12 inches. Fourth, branches shall begin a minimum of 15 feet from the ground. Fifth, the top of the faux tree shall be a minimum of 5 feet above the highest antenna. And sixth, brown paint or bark cladding acceptable to the city shall be used to conceal the vertical sections of the structure. Now, these items were heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 1st. The Commission unanimously recommended approval of the 2 requests. The Commission meetings were public hearings, and as such, all standard public hearing notification requirements were met. There was a mailing to all property owners within 500 feet of the property. A public notice ad was in the newspaper, and a sign was posted on the property identifying the date and time and location of the public hearings. The city did not receive any comments from the public. There were also no public attendees or comments from the required virtual neighborhood meeting that was scheduled on February 22nd. The Fort Huachuca Encroachment Board also reviewed the 2 requests and had no additional comments. So recommending approval of Resolution 2022-009 includes amending the original Exhibit A from Council Resolution 4501 from a monopole design to a monopine, and then approving Resolution 2022-010 includes amending original Council Resolution 4643 from a monopole design to a monopine. This does conclude staff's report. Mr. Mayor, I also want to let you know there will be a representative from SBA in the audience on Thursday to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff on this report?
I have a comment.
What's that? Yes, ma'am.
Being a resident of Sierra Vista in cities, you see these things, and it's a telecommunication. Is it a telecommunication tower or is it a tree? And so it was so cool to see all the thought and the planning that goes into this. And it's a monopine. It's a fun name. So I don't know. I just think it's fascinating. So I love to be able to kind of dig in and kind of learn more about this. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting. The SBA, of course, is one of the biggest power companies in the country, and they deal with the numerous jurisdictions throughout the country. So they have monopines, they have monopalms, they also have saguaro cactuses, and they also mentioned, what was the other one they mentioned at the meeting Tuesday?
Eucalyptus.
Eucalyptus trees as well, apparently. So
that's so cool.
Yes.
So thanks for breaking that down and kind of breaking down in a little bit more and stuff. It's cool.
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, can you go back to the picture of the monopine? I just want to clarify something.
Sure.
No, the real one.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So those antennas, according to our specifications, right, those would not be showing because the branches would extend
5 feet beyond that.
beyond those, right?
Correct,
Okay,
and also 12 inches above the very top antennas as well.
okay,
That's
thank
correct.
you. I
Yep.
just wanted to clarify.
Like this.
Okay.
And that, I'm sorry. And that's the same, what we have out by the hospital with the tree. Is that a monopine
It is a
tree?
monopine, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
If anyone wants to see one in person.
Well, north of the mall, there's a
North of the mall,
there's a
one,
pole
too.
and a pine next to each
Yeah.
other. So you get a good comparison.
I just,
Okay? Anything else? Okay, Jeff, thank you very much. We'll now go to item number 7. And this is Mr. Williams on a lawsuit.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. This item before you would allow the city attorney's office through the city's insurance council to finalize a settlement entered into or proposed between Mary Brown and the city of Sierra Vista. And just for some background, so you know what this is all about. The city has a park over by Village Meadows Schools called Nancy Hakes Park. In 2019, Mary Brown and a friend were over at Nancy Hakes Park, and they were crossing a wooden footbridge that had some planks that were displaced. They were approximately 2 inches higher than the rest of the grade of this wooden footbridge. Miss Brown tripped and fell and injured herself on this bridge, and subsequently, after several months, got knee surgery that she claimed was as a result of or was aggravated by this fall. And so after filing a lawsuit against the city's insurance council and Ms. Brown entered into a mediation on February 22nd, where they arrived at a settlement of all of Ms. Brown's claims against the city. And in order to finalize that settlement and have the judge sign off on it, it requires city council's approval for the city attorney's office to direct our insurance carrier to finalize that settlement. The settlement, the out-of-pocket for the city is just our deductible through our insurance carrier, which is $5,000. That's what the budget would, that's the hit to the budget for the city. And then the insurance carrier will cover the remainder of the settlement. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's the item in a nutshell.
Questions for Mr. Williams? Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. We'll now go on to item number 8. And Deputy Chief, you can tell us about the Southeast Arizona Law Enforcement Training Academy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Service Police Department's committed to supporting SELETA, which is the Southeastern Arizona Law Enforcement Training Academy. That's where we send our recruits currently. It's in Douglas at the Cochise College campus. We realize a pretty significant cost savings by sending our recruits there, and it also provides an opportunity for our general instructors and specialty instructors to teach, and they do a lot. We do a lot of the teaching there. We have in the past donated property to the to Cochise College. When the first academy started, we donated a used vehicle and some radios. So the request here is to provide Cochise College with 4 Crown Victorias, all of which have over 100,000 miles on them and have been taken out of service. They've been transferred to Public Works and otherwise would go to auction. Their value is estimated at about $1,500 a piece, so $6,000. 3, and there's a small error in your packet, I believe. It talks about there being 4 Unitrol light systems. It's actually 3 of them. 3 of those will maintain or have the light bars still attached, and that's a good purpose for them in scenarios and drivers training to have that. But only 3 of the 4, so that's another $3,000 in value. And we're just requesting your approval to donate those 4 vehicles, 3 of which are equipped with the light bars, to Cochise College for use at the academy. Those vehicles have already been taken out of service and otherwise would just be going to auction. Subject to any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Deputy Chief? None. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Let's see, we next go on to item number 9. Ms. Fleming, are you gonna be able to talk about this? Is she here? Yeah, there she is. I don't know if you heard the result of the executive session or not.
Have not.
But anyway, this will be an item on the agenda, so.
Okay, so on Thursday's agenda, I will have a resolution for your discussion and consideration to do an addendum to the city manager's contract. This would be an addendum following the annual performance evaluation and the recommendation for some salary changes to the contract. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We had a pretty good discussion in the executive session, so I think we all are up to speed. So thank you for stepping in at the last minute like that. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. See you on
Okay.
Thursday. Thank you.
All right, then we'll have a call to the public, comments to council, and that will adjourn the meeting. So we're ready now to go to item B on our agenda. Update report on the council's 6-month strategic plan. And
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Victoria, are
Mayor.
you gonna do it, or is the city
No, I'm
manager
doing
gonna
it.
lead you in? Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So as on the agenda, this is the 6-month update to your annual strategic plan. With a 23-page report, I'm certainly not going to talk about everything. I'm going to hit the highlights. If I don't cover something, it doesn't mean it's not as important as the things that I am going to cover. We have plenty of staff here should you have questions on any specific item, and those assigned are all here. So with a 6-month report, I can say that most things seem to be progressing as planned, and except for one item, which I'll cover here briefly, they're all marked as either ongoing or on schedule. We do have one item that I decided to mark as behind schedule, and that was the commission item on page 21. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the number here, but is... Lost it.
Goal 17, page 21, you're right.
Middle of the page.
Thanks. Goal 17 on page 21. So staff has been sharing regular updates in the executive plan on commissions, and so I don't think it's any secret that some commissions we've been struggling to get participation in. There are a few that are doing very well. Notably, Commission on Cultural Diversity was kind of reinvigorated through a citizen-led drive. It's fully seated. They have a good plan of action. They're working on doing some things with Fort Huachuca, so that one's going well. The West End Commission continues to be very active. The other ones, staff have been making effort to draw attention to the communities or the need for community participation and what they are. So we are still working on that. And for reasons that we're also still working to understand, there just hasn't seemed to be a lot of interest there. So what we're looking at next is how to drum up more interest and other ways we might be able to look at commissions. So to date, that is the only one, though, that I've marked behind schedule. So going back here a little bit, starting with item 6.2.1, that's on page 5. This is really the start of your West End revitalization items. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, before we go on to other stuff, because I will forget, as we know. On the commission thing with citizen engagement, I absolutely appreciate, first of all the volunteers that do come forward. But as staff is going through, and because of the way we've changed commissions, at some point, will we need to reevaluate, or I guess Chuck need to evaluate, if we're just not getting members, and maybe community interest has changed, and I don't want to use the name of any commission, so it seems, and I'm talking in general. If it seems the community is just not interested in having or serving on that commission, at some point, will it just kind of go dormant, or would we take it away completely, or how would we handle that?
Well, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Gray, we're going to work through the next year and a half and see how we can garner interest. We do have some other options, like Engage Sierra Vista and some virtual options. But yes, I think the time may be coming, and maybe for the next strategic plan, to look at what some other alternatives are for commissions that, for whatever reason, at this point, people just don't seem to be interested in. But we're going to dig into why, if we can figure out why people aren't interested, and if there's anything we can work with there.
So what I'm hearing is basically for the next year and a half, you'll work on this strategic goal, and then possibly at the next, council might want to consider looking at something different at the next
Yes.
strategic plan. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, so our few items here on West End revitalization, starting with 6.2.1 on page 5, that's the completion of Fry Boulevard. So you're probably well aware at this point that the renovation, the current construction is nearly finished. By the end of the month, you should see substantial completion with the construction on Fry Boulevard. The only part of that that's going to be hanging out there is completion of the intersection at Carmichael and Fry, and that's because of access issues with the hotel there. The decision was made partway through the project to add a fourth leg onto that intersection, which means it'll be turned into a four-way intersection. So we'll have traffic light access there into the hotel, and that will give public safety, fire trucks, the ability to access that property safely. So, but the rest of the project will be completed here for all intents and purposes by the end of the month. But next steps on the project, because this is only phase 1, is the next item, and that's 6.2.2. So just as a reminder to council, the master plan for the entire project, so North Garden and Fry from Garden all the way down to 7th, was completed as part of this first phase by our designers EPS group. So what that means is we have a 25% plan done that tells us the look and the feel and the concept and the preliminary design for the entire thing, and you've seen that come to fruition on the part of Fry that's underdeveloped. So our next step here in your current year's budget, you do have the design for the North Garden piece to complete, and that is about to be awarded, if it hasn't already, to a company, and they'll start working on that design. In the meantime, there are a lot of grants out there. So staff are working to apply for grants to complete all components of the North Garden and Fry Boulevard components. If we're able to snag any of that infrastructure money to complete a chunk or all of it at one time, then staff are working on doing that. Then items 6.2.3 and 4, those are the ones on activating the West End Entertainment District. We have a great partnership between Parks and Rec and Library staff and Community Development. This is kind of the re-envisioning of the West End Fair, which has been renamed West Fest, which is planned for April 30th. This will be the first event in the area to close down the street and have a family-focused event in the first part of the day, bands and entertainment on the second part of the night, and then as parks are finished on the West End, more events and things will be planned by our staff to help activate that area. And then finally, on this section, 6.2.4 is expanding West End redevelopment area in the partnership program, and you all just heard about that. So that is in motion. Moving over to page 9, item 6.5.2. This deals with the first phase of the Veterans Memorial Park Sports Complex, which is in development. And so staff have been working on this for quite a while, every other week for the past couple of months, putting together a phase 2 plan with Schneider Electric that would encompass redoing a large part of the sports complex, and staff will be presenting that plan to council for consideration at your capital projects work session that's scheduled for April 12th. But what that would accomplish is taking care of a large portion of that plan, rehabilitating and focusing on the usability of those sports fields and revenue generation for the area. So we're looking forward to presenting that to you for your consideration here in about a month. Moving over to goal 10, which is on page 11, that's the goal on increasing sports tourism revenue. Again, amazing departmental partnerships across almost all of our departments, getting ready for the El Tour de Zona, which happens at the end of the month. So I think, again, every one of our departments has been involved in getting ready for this, even though it's not our event. We are, of course, supporting that. So that goes a long way towards doing things and bringing in events to bring in that revenue, bring people to Sierra Vista, and show them what a great location we have. Goal 12.2, which is on page 17. This one is public input for the Parks Master Plan. Just wanted to point out our first item, or continuation of this item, really is the public process for Roadrunner Park, which is the land the city owned and the land the city purchased, which is at the corner of St. Andrews and Canyon de Flores. The first public process meetings are scheduled for later this spring, and so we'll start to gain public
Have we
input.
decided the name's gonna be, I hate to bring this up again, but Roadrunner Park, is that gonna be the name, or is it gonna be
That's what's
Three
been
Canyons Park, or what did we decide?
the name has not been decided. That's just what's been in the plan for many years.
Well, I would say,
So
we need to come up with a name, even if it's Roadrunner Park, and stick with it. That's my only point. Shut up.
WB sounds good.
So on page 18, goal 14.1.3, this is the goal on strategies for testing police officers. So something that, this one both didn't go well, but we had something else that came up that is going better than the original plan. So traveling to different military installations to do police recruitment didn't work out all that well over the past few years because of the pandemic, obviously. But another opportunity came up in the meantime, and that was the police department really focused on developing a partnership with both the Transition Assistance and Career Skills Program on Fort Huachuca, and actually has had more success with this than what they were able to do in the past couple of years at other installations. So at this point, there have been multiple applicants from these programs to the police department. I know 2 did not make it through, but I believe there's 1 that is still in the process. So hopefully we'll see at least 1 and then more in the future, police officers who are soldiers transitioning off Fort Huachuca coming over to work for us in Sierra Vista. So that was a really good thing to come about, even though the original intent did not work out. Item 15.2 on page 19, that's the animal shelter expansion, just to share that that is progressing as planned. The architect has been selected, and because we're doing a different type of procurement here, the construction manager at risk has also been identified, and if not formally awarded at this point, that should happen any day. So what happens now is the architect and the contractor work hand in hand to design an expansion based on the master plan that identified the needs for the facility, design an expansion that meets our budget. So this should hopefully ensure that we don't go over budget, but that's we can all hope.
Of course, we may get half the facility.
We may get half the facility, so we'll see on that. And then finally, also on page 19, item 15.4, working with providers and implementing a plan to address homeless, mental health, and affordable housing issues. Just wanted to share that the first one-stop resource and referral center was held last week on March 1st, and I think it far exceeded everybody's expectations as to the number of providers and the number of people who showed up and were able to receive assistance. So that will continue. So with that, staff and myself are happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Questions, who wants to start?
Speaking on that Community Connect, what were we calling it? Where you brought all the-
Proposed as a one-stop resource and referral center. The nonprofit we're working through is dubbed it Community Connect, which same thing. We like it. Yeah.
I'm glad it was successful. What kind of turnout? What does that mean? How many people?
I believe it was around 82 people actually came
Oh, that
to seek
is really good.
services.
Awesome, okay, thank you.
Sir,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because we're there, because we were talking about about this map, I'm gonna stay with you. The initiative, clean up the city initiative, adopting the different parts of the city. Do we put placards or do we put something on there letting them, I mean, what's the incentive for that?
The incentive is giving back to the community.
Well,
We
there-
do not. Yeah,
as you ride
memorialize.
around town, you'll notice, for example, on Charleston Avenue, as you're coming back into town, there's a little blue sign that says, this is policed by the MOA group, the
Right.
Retired Officers Group, and there's other places around town that have those things. The challenge we have, my opinion, is we got more space that needs to be policed than we got groups to be able to do it.
Okay. That was my question, so, thank you.
But and we do provide bags, and we do provide other stuff, so they're not taking anything out of pocket to pick up the trash or police the area.
I think what Councilman Benning was saying do those signs exist to give them
Yeah.
some sort of pride that that's their area?
We
That's
still
their
giving
area.
them those if they
Is that
sign
still-
up
is that
for an
still
area,
happening?
is what I'm, yeah.
Well, I think for the ADOT roadways, they still do that, but not for city facilities. You can adopt a wash, you could adopt a pickleball court, somebody's done that. You could adopt, a segment of a multi-use path. We're just looking for volunteer support across all city facilities, and I think a sign at every segment or location, that would be, maybe a letter or some other acknowledgement. In other places, there was like a dinner. It really depends on what you want to do as a council and the amount of money you want to put towards recognition. But so far, I mean, there's growth in the program. People are signing up, so we haven't found that people are expecting anything beyond
And
just a
and
thank
there's a
you.
formalized
Yeah.
program that says, for example, I know the NAACP does Martin Luther King Boulevard north of the park. And we do have something that says twice a year or 3 times a year, whatever is the guidance, so they get their little sign, right? Is it that formal?
Where's that? No, we don't do signs.
Yeah,
Okay,
not like-
we do
yeah.
not do signs outside of ADOT right away.
Outside of radar, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
But you used to do signs.
We don't. There's turnover in groups, and there's just too
Probably
many
why it
segments.
stopped.
Yeah,
It's
it's just and it's not. It hasn't been asked for or expected.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
What's the process for that?
Down the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, okay, so we have a website with a map that shows facilities that are available, and those have been adopted, and it's a one-page form that goes to Jessica, Code Enforcement, and once we're contacted, we'll work with you on next steps.
Are they able to get volunteer hours from that on their own? Does the city sign off on those things? After they say, hey, it took us 6 hours to clean this up, it gets passed through the city, and they say, all right, we sign off on maybe volunteer hours, things like that, or somebody's trying to accumulate those?
We can.
Okay.
Oh, like the students.
I'm not sure why people would need volunteer hours unless the judge just told them. they need it.
Not only that, but we have a lot of soldiers
Yeah.
aside from them, those people.
Oh, I know there are.
Like the MOVSM is
Yeah, you're right.
service,
We do have,
community service.
occasionally, we do have folks from
Right.
different classes.
Yes.
want to
Or
do
like my
community
class, I'm
service
always
project.
looking for a service project for my
More
class.
than happy to write them a letter or thank them for the hours.
Yeah, I will say that too. My current, my class just graduated March 1st. I sent them 4 areas in the city to try to go clean up, and they're already clean. So, which is good. It's a great thing. Great thing. The city's obviously, it was a park areas, just certain areas of the city that in the past were maybe a little bit troubled. But they all came back and said, there's nothing for us to clean in those areas, which made me feel good sitting in this seat, is that we're taking care of on that end. But unfortunately, I couldn't find the project for them to do in the city at that time. But someone like this may be another avenue for somebody who needs something.
Yeah, we can help you find projects
Yeah.
if you're looking for one.
Okay.
We get some help. Okay.
Correct, bring them on.
Any other items for the staff, guys?
Are we also, for the commission piece, I noticed the economic, what are we calling it?
Yeah,
Development Commission. Are we actively seeking?
I can kind of give you a status. I've been working with Tony. Tony's not here to defend himself, so I'll talk. We've got one person that basically can cover the military contractor phase. We're having a lunch with somebody else that's gonna do the education phase. We're looking for other people. I think those two that I mentioned, I think are gonna be a go and will do a good job. But again, it's trying to pick out the right person in the community. We have had people submit applications, and of course, folks like the chair of the Hispanic Chamber and the chair of the Sierra Vista Chamber are welcome to come to the meetings, but I'm not sure those are the folks we want to have on the commission.
I agree.
And as we develop projects that need to be worked on, I think the best way to do that is to have those subject matter experts work with task forces to attach those specific projects in the economic development field. So it's gonna take a little while to get the right guys, but we're working it. We got some names in other areas like the medical field and a few others that are important to our local economy that we need to go out and court a little bit
Right,
and make
okay.
sure that they understand that they're a quality individual that can contribute. And we're not gonna ask a whole lot of them, but we're gonna ask a whole lot of them.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
We need their expertise. Sir?
There was one on page 5, goal 6.1, and it discusses exploring different technologies and partnerships regarding broadband, 5G, and EV charging stations. Now, as I remember, Mr. Mayor, you talked about not getting involved in EV charging stations, that was more of a thing you'd like to stay away from and have.
Well, what I said is, I don't know if the city themselves needs to own and operate the EV stations.
Right.
And
And
we need the EV stations in town.
Yeah, and I agree with,
Yeah.
I agree with your statement that we don't need to get into the EV charging business.
Yeah. But again, we are doing some things we're looking at, Chuck, can you give us a little, what's going on with our what's the?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, as part of the Schneider project, we are looking at the feasibility of EV stations in town, and there appears to be a number of grant sources available to us as a municipality to do those. So we'll be making a presentation to you on the Schneider project here pretty soon, because this phase of it is wrapping up before we proceed. So so there is a potential of getting outside funds to it, and of course we would not, if the council chooses to go with that, would not do it for free. It would be.
Well, sure, it has to
we would
pay,
get
it
paid
has to
back.
pay for itself, but I don't think we want to, if we can find a viable company to do it,
There we go.
that can do it private, on a private basis, that's fine. If we can't, then we need to look at how we do more than just break even by putting it in the parks or wherever it may be best suited.
There
for
are
short-term
certainly,
and
there are
long-term
certainly
charges.
companies that are in that business.
Yeah, I know.
So.
So, and we gotta make a conscious decision whether it makes sense to have a separate company operate those things, or whether we're gonna operate them. And again, that was a preference I stated earlier. I'd just assume the private folks do that. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thank you to Victoria for presenting the 6th month where we're at, and then the directors and their staff. It's cool walking down, seeing the different things that we're doing, and seeing the things that we said, hey, this is what we want to look at, and then start seeing those differences physically, and not just, hey, we know what it's going to look like, we know people are getting involved, but seeing the things come to the forefront. So I just want to just say appreciate all your hard work, and thank y'all. A lot more to do, but it's already looking good.
Any other, yes, ma'am.
I also really appreciate the breakdown for the update on the strategic plan, just to kind of see how things are moving along, and it's really great to see so many things that are on schedule and moving on. So having the update to kind of going through all the different pieces is great. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Mrs. Yarborough, do you want to have any closing comments?
Nope, that was it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, we thank you and thank all the good work of the staff. Item C is recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. We had an excellent bid more in Sierra Vista, and an excellent report from one of our council persons on what's going on in town for that good public meeting. And I haven't been to any meetings, et cetera, so I don't have anything to report. Does anybody have anything on recent trips, meetings, future meetings? Okay. Future discussion items and council requests, Ms. Yarborough, have we got anything coming up the next couple of months that we need to be apprised of?
Mr. Mayor, I'm still working on scheduling a legislative update for you folks. I'm sorry I don't have a date quite yet, but I am still working on that. And then I think really the next main thing on your calendar is that your budget work sessions start on April 12th. So you have one at the end of this month, and then we'll jump right into budget, starting one after that.
I do have a
Anything else?
question.
Yes, ma'am.
The first couple work sessions this year, we started being presented the city manager's report regarding procurement projects. And then the last couple work sessions, we didn't get one. I really liked that report. It was handy to, are we gonna just stop doing that, or is that, it's like we did it a couple times and then,
You gave us cookies and took it away.
yeah, I like that report. It was handy.
What do you think, Chuck?
Well, we can do that. Basically, how it works is I just get a list from procurement, and a lot of them are duplicative. So, meaning, they're ongoing, or, we reported on it, and, there's really no news to report on it. So I pick and choose a few out of that to present publicly, at the meeting. So, I mean, it's not, all the stuff is online, so.
I know, it was just,
on
it
our
was all
procurement
tidy
page.
in one list, and if we,
like that. I agree.
maybe then,
Well-
not every work session, once a month
Maybe
or
what you
something.
need to do, Chuck, is in your report, you do that once a quarter or so, once every other month, or,
We can add something in the executive report,
there you
too.
go.
Yeah, I liked it more often than that, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, if it's not
If it's too
changing,
much of a hassle.
if it's not changing, you just print more paper.
Yeah.
You're not giving it up, a whole lot of new information, so. And we get your, how often we get your report? Once a month, Chuck?
Yeah, we get that. 2 months, I guess.
Twice.
Two months.
May not be a bad thing.
I'll look at it.
Okay.
It was never meant to be there,
Oh,
because it's a public document.
so you should have just said
It
that.
was a mistake.
2-time mistake,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. So, anything else? All right, seeing nothing else before the council, we'll see you Thursday.